What's up everybody? So in today's video, we are back at talking about dealerships and kind of the ins and outs of how a dealership works. Today's topic is auction vehicles. If you're buying a used car from a car dealership, if that car came from auction, should you be concerned? In all honesty, like 90% of the cars at auction are just normal good cars, and it all comes down to supply and demand. We bought a lot of trucks from Texas. Texas goes through diesel trucks like crazy. There's so many sold there, which means there are so many traded into dealerships all the time down there. Dealerships down there honestly get a huge overload of used trucks in their inventory. They send most of them to auction just because they cannot keep up with them. They have too many of them. They need to get rid of them. It's not that they're junky trucks that are beat up. It's just they have hundreds and hundreds that they cannot all sell. Why have $1 million worth of trucks in inventory when they can get all that money back at auction and just focus on the actual size dealership that they run? Same thing goes, we bought a lot of Audis. In all honesty, after working in the car business, Audis are one of my favorite luxury cars. I never had issues with those cars, so that's for a whole different video, but we bought a lot of Audis because they were fantastic in all honesty. But a lot of them we did buy from the auction because a lot of people lease Audis. You know, any type of luxury car, a little bit more expensive car like that, people are gonna lease. And with that said, when you're leasing a car, you're really not leasing it from the dealership you bought it from. You're actually leasing it from a leasing company. So when that car gets turned in on lease, 3-4 years later, the lease company is not a dealership. They don't really sell cars. So every month they're getting a huge fleet of vehicles back. They're going to send them all to auction just because they're not a dealership. So they're going to send it to auction to sell those cars, to get their money out of it, to continue their business. And a lot of times the dealers, like an Audi dealer, will buy those cars at auction to have as their certified pre-owns, or if it's a trade-in at the Audi dealer, they might want to keep that one to have as a CPO. But a lot of times, again, with supply and demand, if a lease company gets 500 cars one month, they're not all going to go right back to an Audi dealership. A lot of them are going to go to auction, go to other dealers around the country, a lot of used car dealers, a lot of other Audi dealers around the country. That's just kind of how it works. And then another thing cars would go to auction for, if a dealership gets a car that they don't specialize in. So this GTR, this is a $70,000 car. If this gets traded into a Kia dealership, the Kia dealer really doesn't want to have 70 grand tied into a used car. They deal with $20,000 to $30,000 brand new cars all the time. They get a lot of $10,000 to $20,000 trade-ins. They don't want to deal with this. They might put it out there for a week or two, but most likely their general manager doesn't want that car, so they're going to send it to auction, get their money out of it at auction, at least what they paid for, maybe a little bit more, hopefully make a grand or two. So the dealer that I was at, we did a lot of specialty cars, a lot of really cool things, and a lot of times our higher end stuff came from normal dealerships because it happens all the time. Sometimes some people will buy a car that's too expensive. They might buy a brand new Mercedes, $100,000 luxury car. A few months later, they might realize that payment is way too much for them. It's just a lot more than they wanted to take on. So they'll trade that car into even a Toyota dealer, a Honda dealer, just a normal car dealer. And that dealer is going to get a car that's more money than they want to have in a car. So they're going to send it to auction. Now, on top of that, sometimes a dealership will get in a trade that they don't necessarily want, not because of the pricing of it, but because they can't compete. We had a guy who bought a brand new GMC Sierra 2500 HD Denali, like a $75,000 brand new diesel truck. Beautiful vehicle, but after like 3 months of owning it, he only put 2,000 miles on it, and he basically wanted to sell the truck because it was overkill. After buying it, he was like, I just want a basic truck. I really didn't need to spend this money on something crazy like this. We had a $30,000 diesel Ram that he wanted, and while everyone wanted to make the deal happen, we knew buying a truck that was literally just a few months old with a few thousand miles on it, we couldn't compete selling that vehicle. We were not a General Motors dealership, so to have a $70,000 used truck when a brand new one at the GMC dealers were pretty much the same price, nobody would buy that. So for us, we didn't want to buy that just because we couldn't compete, especially with brand new vehicles like that. Anything for us that was a year old or less than that, it was a hard vehicle to sell because you can buy a brand new one with dealer rebates and stuff and probably spend less money. Nobody's going to spend more money on a used truck when you can buy one actually from the dealership for less money. So for us, we contacted some of our wholesale companies to say, hey, we got this deal coming. Do you guys want to buy this truck? I think someone offered saying that they'd buy it for like 72 grand. I think the customer wanted 71. So we ended up making the deal. We bought it for 71, already had it sold for a $1,000 profit to the wholesale company, and we can make our deal happen. But a lot of times, certain dealerships, they're just not going to want to have something that's almost brand new. With that said, of course, there are the junky cars at auctions. We did it. Everybody does it. We got a Ford F-150 once that came in. The front and rear main seal were blown on it. It had a blown head gasket. It was a pile of junk. The truck looked great. It was in beautiful shape, had like 100,000 miles on it, fully loaded truck, but the engine obviously was about to blow. It wasn't a good truck. So what did we do? We sold it at auction. We sent it there. It was as is. The auction company would do a full report on it to disclose any issues with it. And we sold it. We got about our money out of it, which was great. We didn't have to deal with a problem vehicle anymore. Who knows where that truck is now? Some dealership probably bought it. Hopefully they either fixed it or some crappy dealer's probably trying to sell it as a good truck. That does happen, of course. It's just basically the national used car dealership. There's so many cars out there in circulation. They're not always going to be at a dealership. The auctions are places where people can buy cars throughout the country from dealer to dealer, and it's just a big place of cars. If you are buying a used car from either a brand new car dealership or a used car dealer, ask where they got the car. It might have been a trade-in, it might have been an auction car. If it's a trade-in, of course, try to ask about the previous owner, what they did with it. When my brother bought his Tacoma, he was also looking at a used one right next to it. It was only $2,000 less for the used one, and I asked him a lot of questions about it, and the dealership told me that he traded it in for a diesel truck that they had in their lot because they needed something to tow with. And when I looked at the trailer hitch on that used Tacoma, there was a lot of scratch marks in it, meaning it had been used for towing. The owner had put a trailer hitch in it many times, and I told my brother right off the bat, you probably don't want to buy this because he was using it to tow something a lot bigger where he needed a diesel truck. So that was just another reason why my brother bought the brand new one for just a little bit more. But then if it did come from auction, if a dealership says that they bought it from auction, hopefully they are honest with you and upfront with it. Ask them about arbitration. If they don't know what that word is, try to talk with their used car manager or general manager. If nobody knows what that word means, I would not buy that car from them because they're either lying or hiding something somewhere. Any car that we bought from auction, we could arbitrate. What that means is we could return it, get our money back, and it never even happened. So every single car that we bought, it was only like $200 more we pay to have arbitration. That means if the car came in, we'd have about 10 days to do a full inspection. Every single car we took in had a full inspection to make sure there was no leaks, nothing mechanically wrong with it, a good condition used car. So if there was something wrong, like a rear main seal or a blown head gasket, that was arbitratable. We could send it back and say, hey, we don't want this car, give us our money back. It's not for us. And we'd be able to do that every time. Some things were not covered if it was like under $500 repair, like let's just say the rear shocks were blown, maybe $300 repair, we just get it fixed and call it a day. But anything major like detrimental issues with it, something that was not disclosed when we were buying the car, we could arbitrate it for. So make sure the dealership you're buying from knows what that means. And if they know what you're talking about when you say arbitration and they tell you that they do send cars back if they don't meet what the seller disclosed, you're probably getting a good car because we wouldn't keep cars that were junk. We didn't want anything crappy on our lot. If a car came in with major issues, we'd send it back. Sometimes though, a car could come in with somewhat of a major issue and the seller would pay to have it completely repaired. A lot of times BMWs would have issues. Many times the seller would be totally okay with us bringing it to BMW, having every single thing repaired, and now we'd have a good quality car once again. So that's the type of insurance policy really good to have as a used car dealership or any dealership buying cars from auction. And like I said, if you're gonna buy a used car from a dealership and they do arbitration, then you're gonna get a car that was probably in good condition from the beginning. It wasn't at the auction because it was a pile of junk. It was probably there just because of the reasons that I talked about earlier. So with that said, what should you do when you're buying your next car? In all honesty, any used car, whether it was a trade-in or an auction vehicle, have what's called a pre-purchase inspection done. So if you're buying an Audi from a FOURR dealership, ask the dealership, be like, hey, can we bring this to the Audi dealership and have a pre-purchase inspection done? Normally they only cost $100 to $200, and it's really just the manufacturer's dealer looking at the car inside and out. They have their own process they do. They diagnose the whole computer system of it. They look at it mechanically, leaks, every single thing about it to see if this car is in good quality condition. And anytime we would sell any type of high-end car, we would encourage the customer honestly to say, hey, let's get this to the dealership, have them do a full pre-purchase inspection on it, just so both of us are sure that it is a good quality car. Because even from the dealership's perspective, if we were selling a $50,000 Audi and the customer or us brought it to the dealer for a pre-purchase inspection, we both know, hey, Audi checked off saying that this car is in really good condition, everything is good on this car. If something ends up going wrong in the car, both of us can just say, it happened. These are mechanical objects. Things can happen tomorrow that absolutely had no signs today. So any type of pre-purchase inspection is something you really want to do. My GTR, I bought this without ever even seeing it. I purchased it, signed paperwork and everything before ever seeing the car. My brother's Audi R8, he did the exact same thing. Now, why was I comfortable doing that? Well, this came from a Nissan dealership, so it had a full pre-purchase inspection done. A Nissan dealer isn't gonna put this car on their lot knowing that it's a pile of junk. And on top of that, the Nissan dealer I bought it from had like 6 GTRs in their inventory. They were a big GTR dealership. So for me, I was very comfortable knowing that this car had gone through the inspection by the GTR technicians to make sure that it was how it should be. And same thing with my brother's Audi. 1,000 miles before it was offered for sale, it was at Audi for a full inspection, everything serviced on it, every single thing done. So he was very confident that this car was probably a good car. And the dealer he bought it from had a 90-day warranty. So the one brake caliper that had an issue with it, he was able to get that fixed under warranty. So a pre-purchase inspection is something you're going to want to do on any used car. It just gives you and the dealership peace of mind. It doesn't cost much, and just a really good way to know that your car, whether it was a trade or an auction car, is actually in perfect condition. So I think that about sums up everything about auction cars. Don't let that discourage you. It was a little weird at first, 3 years ago when I learned about auction cars. I was kind of scared of it. I thought that meant they were all junk. But honestly, just with supply and demand and what dealers are going to want to have in a car and what they're not going to want to have in a car, that's where a lot of cars go. But that kind of wraps up everything about an auction car. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give it a huge thumbs up. Smash the subscribe button. Don't forget about merchandise in the description below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. We'll see you all next video.